lost internet there for a split second. Hopefully everybody's dialing back in. Not quite sure why that was. Hopefully Johnny Million will jump back in. That was not good. Johnny, if you'll dial back in, if Chicago, if you'll, hopefully we're going into a break anyway, so the timing on that could have been better. But refresh if you would. I should be back up, and then we'll see if Johnny can dial back in. Fingers crossed. Chicago, refresh, everybody. Da 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 da. Hopefully they can come back in. I don't quite know when that happened. It just kind of dropped out. It was very odd. Might be one of those overlaps in. Yep, all good. Everybody's back. Gee, it's funny when I bring this stuff up, I suddenly lose contact. Isn't that weird? Isn't that weird? Hold on, let me jump back in here, and we'll see if Johnny Million can hop back in. And hi, chat room. Doink. Let me move this up here. Hi, there they are. Hi, chat room. Hopefully Chicago can come back in. If there's an issue, do I have to reload them? I don't think so. Yeah, the link should be fine. I see you guys, so I do have internet. So I don't know if it's something on that end or if everybody just got shut down. Dear Lord. Could it be well, it's not an eCam fail because, oh, there he is. There, Johnny Million's back. Hold on. Add to the right. Hi, Johnny Million. Sorry. Welcome back. Hold on. Let me go back to here. Can you hear me? Okay.
Yes.
Excellent. So we lost Chicago, but we're in break, so hopefully they can come back in. I don't see them in the room.
Okay,
Maybe I
I'm letting
refresh.
them know that we're back. Devin texted me.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, we're back up, and should be fine. I don't know what their situation was as far as dropout. I hope it wasn't
They just
egregious.
saw the screen went black and there was no sound.
Yeah, that's what I got on my end too. They just dropped off, and it said network connection lost on their end.
Okay, so I just
So
sent them a note that said we're back if you can reconnect.
yeah. So and we should
Or
still be in
we're
break.
back if you can reconnect.
Okay, great. So hopefully we'll be back up in a second. Interesting that when I start diving into this stuff, that's when we drop off. I'm just saying. Curious? Couldn't possibly be just crap internet in the middle of Jackpot, Nevada. Nah. So
Nah.
we're kind of getting towards the break anyway. So Chicago's back. I hope we're okay. Chicago, hopefully you hear us. And let me know when we're back up and just throw me a bone here. Check.
Here.
I see I'm sending audio their way. I don't see a window up on their page quite yet, so maybe it's an issue on their end. Yep, there we go. Hey, I hear music from Chicago. Okay, great. We're coming back from the break. Okay. Welcome back. Sorry about that little drop off. It's the nature of being in the butt knuckle of Nevada up here near the Idaho border. Now, I have to say, we were kind of getting into, as we dropped off, curiously enough, the fact that in these new court documents from the victims of Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell, there were several people who were referred to in the court documents and were sealed. Their names were hidden as John Does. There are 200 John Does in these.
Terrifying.
Yeah. Now, let's be abundantly clear. Some of the John Does and you can see it on the flight logs, even though the flight logs don't redact
I assume
them.
nice people.
Well, they are airplane techs and people who have to do like jet ride techs for the ownership of, to make sure that it's FAA compliant. So there's the regular pilot that he has fill-in pilots or other people that come around and go, we'll do a test flight of your plane. There is no one on the plane but them. They take it up, they put it through its paces, and then they land it again. And those people are in the log. Nobody in their right mind thinks that those people are particularly guilty. Now, is there a chance one or two of them was lying on the logs and they were delivering people, or they had drugs or other stuff, or they were using the plane for nefarious purposes? Possibly. But there is no secondary evidence, so those people are not in deep water about this. But There are two particular John Does that I think are germane to the entire conversation about politics in our country specifically, beyond Alan Dershowitz, who shows up a bunch as well. Is I believe it's John Doe 32 and
Mm.
John Doe 174. Now, John Doe 32, and maybe 34 if I'm mistaken, forgive me, is Bill Clinton. And according to the judge, the Bill Clinton made no effort to block the release of his name as that John Doe. He took no legal action. They informed all these John Does that their name could be released, and they have the right to file an injunction saying this will, ruin my reputation, and I never did anything, and until I'm guilty of something, right? I should not be, included in this. And that, again, some of the pilots did that. Some of the techs did that. People servicing the airplane did that who just worked at the airport, in Florida or, West Palm Beach or something like that. Reasonable that those people would fight back against it. But, and thank you, Boston Brian. Thanks so much, brother. I can't wait to see you next weekend. Breakfast with Brian. We're going to film it.
Yay. I love
But
breakfast.
But for the record, according to the judge, Bill Clinton made no effort, and they were contacted and allowed to hide his name in these documents. As far as Donald Trump, the response was no comment. They did not say whether or not Trump did or did not, which, by the way, says to me he absolutely did. And
Yeah.
part of that request was, you can't, it's sort of a tacit admission, like, do not reveal my name. And if you do reveal my, if it's already been revealed, we deny it. So Trump, made effort, insofar as we know, to keep his name hidden in these documents, has continued to do so, said so on Fox and Friends. And he is John Doe 174. The descriptions from the victims of what Donald Trump did is grotesque. But on top of that, it is absolutely in line with his disgusting behavior that he described to Howard Stern in a myriad of interviews where he had no qualms about talking about barging in on underage girls while they were
Oh, yeah. It was
changing
hilarious then.
and talking about sex with his daughter. Um, even from Stormy Daniels to anyone else, like his constant, you kind of look like my daughter to people that he has had sex with, and it is it just he's not even ashamed to say it. It's super odd.
It's
Like
super not cool.
it's I have to say, beyond the just sort of crassness of it, and that you're stunned that somebody would say something like this. It's kind of amazing that a grown man would say about their own daughter when someone says, "What do you have in common?" and you say sex on daytime television, right? That enough. Like again, there's so many elements of this where, um, like butter emails / tan suit were enough for people to think they could disqualify Democrats from the ballot. Which, by the way, the tan suit being perfectly fine, and we've seen Republicans wear tan suits in all kinds of circumstances since, and somehow they don't bat an eye. And of course, Hillary Clinton. First of all, by the way, if you'll recall, in 2016, she was dying of any number of
Yep.
diseases. And they were going to have to replace her, and Obama was going to have to be replaced right after his Mitt Romney, debacle the first time around. But Donald Trump goes on morning television, and when asked what he has in common with his daughter, he says sex. Now, I, I have to say, I mean, I don't have to, but it seems self-evident to me, that if they were the same gender, right? If this was him talking about a son, What do you have in common with your
Right.
son? Sex. We're both male. Like, I don't know. The rest of it, we're totally different people. Would in and of itself be a weird answer. It would be just super frigging weird. But the fact that that piece, that piece of video alone would have been enough to jettison any Republican in the past. So what
Yeah.
does that tell you? What does that tell you about the modern Republican Party? Beyond the fact that just go Google youth pastor arrested and you'll find out
Right.
the crowd these folks hang in. Or Trump campaign and, child pornography. You will obviously, no, thank you. I'm in a hotel. Um,
Was it mouse keeping?
yes.
Mouse
Um,
keeping.
right.
There's a cat out there.
Yeah, exactly. There is, there should have been the Republicans had a chance to get off this train a long time ago. And to me, that says two things. One is they don't care who's in charge as long as they think that person can puppet their ideals. That Donald Trump is
Yep.
there strictly. He wants the creature comforts of being president, none of the responsibility, and he wants bragging rights of being president. And as long as they give him an instruction manual like Project 2025, he will follow it to the letter. Now, the business community is increasingly coming to terms with the fact that he absolutely will not. And he thinks that he knows better than the economists and the generals and the pandemic response team and the IRS and the FBI and the CIA and our own intelligence community. He's smart, and his ego is so predicated on that belief system that if someone challenges him, he's simply going to do something terrible to the country just to prove he knew better, even if it turns out worse. Even if they gave him an instruction manual, even if they give him Project 2025. They know this. And so that's why there aren't a bunch of millionaires and billionaires supporting him this time, unless they are Ginny Thomas types, unless they are rich and nuts, as the Batman would say, basically just rich and nuts. Um, um, so, and this piece of information, the fact that this stuff has started flowing up, and the idea that even Republicans were floating a Trump DeSantis ticket as early as 2 weeks ago, until the rest of this stuff started coming out. And somebody just asked, why is Biden staying in the race? I'll tell you exactly why. Because he can do the job. He's already proven himself capable of doing the job. He knows how to build a team that can execute the policies that he's put forward. He's got good judgment, and if he drops out, there's a 6-point deficit with anybody else. If they start from scratch, we lose. And he's already doing better because, beyond even the polls, the internal workings that get out the vote campaigns, the number of registered voters in all these places and in swing states, the machine put in place by the Democratic Party to make sure that people vote and log their vote early, make sure that they voted and don't have to worry about it up until election day, so that they can avoid any October surprise BS from that's, by the way, that's partly why you're seeing the October surprises happen in June and May, is because
Yeah, for
early
real.
voting starts in August. It's exactly why.
Oh, yeah.
And they just push the date back on your October surprises. These are May, June surprises. And still, it is not having the impact. Yeah. It is not like the debate did not have the impact on anybody except the chattering class and people in the Democratic Party, by the way, who are still miffed that they weren't the person, that they weren't the person running, that they didn't win last time, or that they supported somebody else. And on top of that, I mean, what more do you need to say? Donald Trump said, we had H2O during the debate. And in any sane world, that would get equal time with we beat Medicare. And people would compare those two things and go, what obviously Biden, um, flubbed and meant we beat big pharma because that's what the policy did. And they ended up lowering costs for people on Medicare and it benefited them. Everybody's aware of that. Everybody gets that was a flub. What in the ever loving hell does we had H2O mean? I've still not had anybody be able to answer that. We had H2O. Yes, we did have water. We still have water. Water still exists. The planet is mostly water. Most human
Remember
beings are
water?
mostly water. Remember? Yes. Yes. That'll be the title of his third autobiography. Remember when we had water? The Donald Trump story.
I remember.
Um, and again, Doe 174, folks. Hashtag Doe 174. Hashtag Jeffrey Epstein's wingman. That
Hmm.
is who Donald Trump is as a man, as a human
Yep.
being. And anybody who thinks that there's a single person who voted for Biden last time who's going to vote for Donald Trump this time with more information about his Epstein connections than we even had last time is insane. So you think one debate performance like that, or even the fact that Biden has a stutter or is older now than he was when he first elected, is going to make them vote against women's rights or to gut or destroy Medicare, Medicaid, and Social Security? Forget it. It ain't happening. That's the shocker that's coming. Donald Trump is going to lose again to a person that he is making the case is even more doddering than he was when he beat him the first time. We'll be back. It's the House Sparks Radio program, Mega Worldwide. Mm-hmm.
All right, I need to do a little more cat maintenance here.
Okay. You got to do what, rotate her tires or?
Yeah, pretty much. Got to take her
Mm-hmm.
claws out.
Mm-hmm.
Be
Oh,
right back.
God. What is that going on in the background? I will say that um, there are, let's see, what's the top trending things? Biden closes gap in key states despite debate flaws is trending, and Trump denies knowing Project 2025, and then of course the Trump Epstein stuff. Hmm. The other thing is Trump accused of underage sex. Boy, Elon Musk is polishing that turd, isn't he? Trump accused of underage sex. You mean raping a child? Jesus. Here comes John Foleying his
There we
way
go.
back.
Yeah.
Clip clap.
No more claws.
Chicago. Yep. Chicago, can you hear me?
This is
Just making sure.
just soft fur and blood.
Back in 30 seconds. Thank you. There is a there is a delay um, in the news cycle where it works its way up to the panic point, and then we used to in this country And if you go watch an old Mort Saul special or a Lenny Bruce bit about politics, we used to have a political joke cycle that was as long as 5 to 10 years. And the example that I think best given is Reagan jokes, second term or even leading into the second term, where what was the main joke or impersonation point that I'm sure Johnny you can even do it,
Yeah.
that you would hear about.
Yeah.
Well, I don't recall. Right? That was
Mhm.
the if anybody recalls, that period as well as we do, and if you don't, go watch the Genesis Land of Confusion video
Oh boy, oh boy.
where they
Those
use a
puppets
spitting image.
terrified me.
Yeah, the Spitting Image Dolls, which is a British television show where they mock politicians, and they used them. They made a spitting image video, and a big portion of that is Ronald Reagan and Nancy Reagan in bed, and him with a monkey. And remember that? Well, Betty by Bo's time again. And then he hits the launch button, and he goes, "Launch." I thought it said lunch, right? These were the
Right.
jokes that were. Go watch even Robin Williams's jokes about Ronald Reagan from that period.
Mhm.
4 or 5 years of people talking about um, doddering and dumb and confused and old Ronald Reagan. And yet his 8 year term goes down for Republicans, at least until Trump showed up, I will say, as one of the greatest Republicans that ever lived. Obviously, Trump came in and urinated all over that legacy with wanton abandon in the same way that he mocked John McCain's military service. But um, lest we forget, that has been a constant storyline. I mean, most of the jokes about Joe Biden slipping going up the stairs are recycled Gerald Ford jokes.
Yeah. That poor dude, I
Um,
think only like fell twice, and that's his
mhm,
whole presidency.
right. Now, if we're going to go back in history and look at people's responses to things, one of the stories that I think what Trump calls the failing New York Times, I don't think they're failing. I think they're flailing, but they're definitely making money hand over fist in the clickbait wars right now. One of the, besides them running an op-ed entitled "I Don't Vote, Maybe You Shouldn't Either," I think I'm paraphrasing, by a guy who voted in the last 4 elections, insofar as we know. He certainly did in the last two. So it was not only a lie, it was anti-voting propaganda from the New York Times. Um, One of the stories they ran was stories about the last time Democrats had an incumbent who stepped down and decided to only serve one term and not run again, and what we can learn from that. And their conclusion is that he did the best for his legacy, and this would be Lyndon Baines Johnson. And what I would like to remind everyone about is, if you actually pay attention to history, is that LBJ stepping down um, gave us Nixon as a president
Yep.
and triggered the catastrophic nature of the Nixon presidency. The think of the lack of trust that came from um, Nixon's presidency about the presidency itself. The the absolute destruction of the veneer of character around the presidency was Nixon is primarily responsible for that. And he
Mhm.
would not have been president had Lyndon Johnson run again. Period. The
He
only
couldn't
reason,
win.
right? The only reason Nixon got in was because of a three-way split ticket, effectively, that where there was a third party runner that ate up a bunch of votes and tightened it, and that Hubert Humphrey was never going to be the guy. If Johnson had run, he'd have won. And the people that talked him out of it were morons who gave us the the awfulness of the Nixon presidency, which would have gone away in one cycle had Lyndon, because there were other people who came up who were going to run. You might have even had a Ford presidency by himself, not as a vice president in that cycle. A much better man, a much better president, and again, even as a Republican, a reasonable human being.
Yeah.
But all the people, all the wailing and gnashing of teeth about low opinion polls and all that kind of stuff, absolutely obliterated the the chance, the sane response, which would have been Johnson should have just run again. And what did we get in exchange for that? The absolute destruction of the character of the presidency under Nixon. It is absurd. The rest of us, though, were awake during all this stuff, or at least awake during history class. Yeah. Yeah. And ultimately, again, Bobby Kennedy running and becoming, and getting assassinated certainly had an impact on who was there. But again, that wouldn't have probably happened in the time scale. Bobby Kennedy was a young man. Can you imagine the 70s if Bobby Kennedy was an 8-year president, had lived and not been assassinated while he was running for president? Like, I don't know if you've watched Johnny Million, if you've watched For All Mankind. It's the
No.
Okay, it's a series, I think it's on Apple Plus, about what if the Russians had gotten to the moon first, which is a
Oh,
hilarious
cool.
premise, but with very dark consequences. And there's a lot of
Yeah.
stuff in it. And one of the things is that little things changed affect the aspect of it. And there was no Watergate because of it, because Nixon ran in a different situation and didn't feel like he needed
Right.
to undermine the Democrats coming for him, and never became a drunk yelling about Jews in the hallways of the Oval Office. But it switched up the time stream, essentially. So a lot of cascading effects politically and economically happened because of that. Different companies getting contracts, different politicians, rising up. And so the cascading effect of this, cannot be underestimated, in its impact. Cannot be overestimated, I guess, in its impact. So those that are asking for Biden to stand down, I would, because he's too old, I would remind you that his judgment is sound, his plans are working, the people he puts in charge and who are executing his strategies are sound and smart, and we have a vice president for a reason. So the idea that, and again, these are the people who would have driven Roosevelt out because he was in a wheelchair. Let's be abundantly clear, that all of Roosevelt's accomplishments would have been erased by this reaction.
Yep.
So, and on top of that, on top of all of it, Biden is doing better in the polls. Even the attacks on him in the press are being seen as more favorable by the voting public. George Stephanopoulos' interview with him, which I watched all the way through, was not an interview. It was George Stephanopoulos berating Biden with the same question in 9 different forms. And everybody's saying, what happens if you stay in and you lose? How would you feel if Donald Trump is president? You go, well, I felt like I did my best. And everybody's like, oh dear, the ego. Well, how about this? What if you drop out and the person that fills in loses and you could have won? How would you feel? Well, I felt like I would have done the right thing by stepping down if that was my decision. That is a terminal hypothetical. There is no right answer to that answer. So anybody who's pearl clutching and saying it's ego that Biden, said if he loses and Trump becomes president, he would say he did his best. That's true even if he steps down and somebody else loses. That's the point. If Trump is president, how would you feel about whoever runs? How would you know? It's a terminal hypothetical. It's absurd. There is no right answer. The whole purpose of that was George Stephanopoulos acting as an agent of other people trying to get Biden to say, I'm out. There's a window where I'm out. And Biden isn't giving because he's not stupid. We'll be back right after this. Philip Bittner will be joining us from Ukraine, the internet gods willing. And there he is ringing in the background. So we'll be back right after the news. Follow us on all your socials. And don't forget, Johnny Million has a live stream at It's Johnny Million on YouTube and Twitch. And of course, infotainmentwars.com. We're still in existence, unlike InfoWars. There's Phil, and we will add him in here in just 1 minute. Let me see if I can get the right window. Let's pop in here. Go Johnny Million and Philip Bittner. There we go. And move this over here. And then Johnny Million. You're right. Let's see. Hold on. Let's see. Place over guest. All right. This will work. Hi, Phil. Can you hear okay?
Yep, I can hear you.
Excellent. We hear you
Can
just
hear me?
fine. Sounds
Okay,
good.
good.
Yep.
Hey, Philly.
Hey, Johnny, how are you, bud?
I'm good.
Good.
Yeah, and then where's John? Oh, there it is. Dink.
You got electricity and everything today?
No, not today. No lights on.
I'm sorry, buddy.
No lights on Olga. We're living
right.
on. We're living on this thing.
Right.
We won't have power for at least another 2 hours, but potentially 5.
Gotcha.
Mm.
Is John?
Could be another 5 hours. I hope it won't be, but
Right.
could be. The only thing I know for sure is 2. We're definitely not going to have it for the next 2 hours.
Gotcha. Okay, there it is. I was like, where the
Always
heck?
fun. Always fun.
This back up. There we go. I was like, it was buried underneath there. There you go. Now we got it. Okay. Now we'll be gathering questions, everybody. So Johnny, you should be able. I don't know if can you favorite questions? Are you able to see the chat room? I mean, on your eCam side.
It's all like kind of read only for me.
Okay.
Like if I right or left click on it, nothing happens.
Right. Dink. There we go.
Oh, I have a bigger battery. This is my battery. This is my power station is what they call them here. These power stations that you can get with an actual electrical plug. This is the smallest one I have. At the office, I have 2 really large ones because, of course, if I have to, I can run the studio for about an hour, which will include all the proper lighting and the monitor and all the rest of it.
That's a lot. Yeah.
So it's a lot of power. So I've got ones that are like this big, you know, like a size of like a printer. That kind of it's that bulky. I've got 2 of those. So I mean, if push comes to shove, if we really get in a bad situation, I can just go down to the office and grab those and bring them back. But for my purposes at home here, just this little one, because all I really need is I just need a light. I need because my stove is gas. The stovetop is gas. I can't run the oven, but I can do the stovetop.
The remote control.
But all I need is my computer, and then occasionally when I'm doing this kind of stuff is my computer, my camera, my ring light, and all of that can be run off of this little thing. So I'm okay. It's stuck. Okay. It sucks. I have a solar panel version. Yeah, I do. It's not very good, but it'll work.
Gotcha.
Yeah,
Let's see.
I'm debating whether or not to get a full fledged Jenny.
Right.
They're such a pain in the ass.
Yeah.
So you're having to top them up with petrol, and it's just they're a nightmare. But if I have to, they're available.
Thank you.
Oh, I am tired. Yes, I am. I'm extremely
I
tired.
can imagine.
Yeah, they are loud. Yeah. I'm just following along with the chat here.
Right. We're coming back.
Yep. But it is exhausting. This whole the lack of electricity. It's amazing how draining it is, because everything is at the whim of something else, and you can never make any
Right.
plans. And,
Welcome back to the show. Joining us right now from Ukraine, our dear friend Philip Bittner. We didn't get a chance to talk on Wednesday, so welcome doubly so. Johnny Million will be farming the chat room for questions that they might have, and I'm sure there's a level of
I'm a
pent up
farmer.
questions. Yeah, you're an L farmer, effer. Yeah. Also, I want to thank Matt and Jerry and Balthanos and the Lady Beatrice and Fredbear and Say What and Boston Brian for the super chats, along with Hal Vickery, you beloved, wonderful people, for supporting the show. Also, there's a Venmo up near here, and of course, patreon.com/HalSparks. Now, obviously, I'm sure there's a bunch of people who are like wondering, how is this going to, was there an impact of the debate and all that kind of stuff? In Ukraine and around the world? Is that being heard, or do they even care? Are they seeing the polls like we are, which is oddly showing Biden with with better numbers?
I don't think the vast majority of Ukrainians are following it that precisely. They're
Right.
aware that the general perception is that Biden did not do well during the
Mm-hmm.
debate, and obviously that has people concerned. It has people concerned, not least of which because Trump keeps saying, I could solve the war in 24 hours. Well, the only way you do that is to force, or to try to force, Kiev to give up and basically surrender, which they aren't going to do. But they don't want Trump here. They definitely do not want to see Trump get a second term. They know what that's going to mean. So in that sense, they followed along and in the aftermath of the debate. But I don't think that there's probably very few who are doing the exact polling numbers and stuff like that
Right.
a week plus out. Zelensky sat down with, I believe it was Bloomberg he sat down with, and basically called Trump on his bluff and said,
right.
One, if you got a great plan, tell us. Why wait?
Let's hear it, dummy.
This war.
Right.
Yeah, let's go. Let's hear the specifics, because nobody wants this war to end more than the Ukrainians do. But they want a victory. They want the war to end in a just victory. So if Zelensky in this interview says, okay, Trump, if you got a 24-hour plan, what is it exactly? But if indeed it is, you are going to ask us to capitulate, tell us that now as well, because we'll start preparing, just in case you do get back in, because we're not what Trump doesn't understand, because he's a dullard. And he has no understanding of the situation here, is that you can't force Ukraine to surrender. They're not going to.
Right.
They're simply not going to.
You also cannot force Russia to stop and go home. Like that's the other part. What happens? The second question with Trump always has to be in these situations, what if Russia says no? What if they just continue? Yeah. What if they want their, what else leverage are you going to use that Biden hasn't already used? Short of I guess firing into the country from the U.S. What are you talking about? How do if they want that territory, what are you going to do to get him to say, okay, fine, we'll leave? It's never going to happen. It's ridiculous. And the question, because he doesn't intend to, he intends on giving
No, of course he
Ukraine
doesn't.
to Putin. Right.
Yeah, yeah, and again, he doesn't understand, as I think actually a lot of people in the West do not understand, is that
Right.
Ukraine doesn't take orders from anybody. They have been there, a vast proportion of their history, and we're talking like 500 plus years. They have been a colony. They have been controlled by outside empire, imperial powers in some capital far, far away. Well, they're done with that. I mean, and it's a big thing here: sovereignty, autonomy, self-determination. I know several delegations that have come here from the West and tried to like dictate to the Ukrainians, and the Ukrainians have flat out said, "Look, we are appreciative of your help, and we're glad you're here, but we're going to do what we're going to do." And like I know of several. I know guys like in security details for these delegations, and they stick with the delegates after the meetings, and like the people coming out of these meetings with Ukrainian leaders are like, well, wait a minute, what just happened? What just happened?
Right.
We came over here because we're giving all this largesse, and support for Ukraine. We want to be able to dictate to Ukraine, and people here in Ukraine are like, while we are very appreciative, we
right.
are a sovereign nation. We are a sovereign nation. That's a really big thing here because of the history of colonization. They are so resentful of the idea of some other foreign power telling them this is what you have to do, because that's what they've heard for centuries. And it's led to really horrible subjugation of these people. And they're just not going to, friend or foe, they're not taking orders from anybody. They're a sovereign nation. And they're
right.
finding their feet, but they're determined to keep it. So Trump doesn't have a card that he can pull and say, Kev, you're going to do this, because Kev's going to go, on your bike, buddy. So anyhow, all of that rounding back to American politics is something they keep a very close eye on. They're aware of it. They're savvy, but they're going to do what they're going to do.
Yeah, there's been a lot of talk recently, and I think it's ramping up, and I think you've been pointing it out for quite some time, that Russia is effectively at war with the West and the United States, has been for quite some time, and it's far past time for us to kind of catch up to the fact that they are attacking us on a myriad of fronts, and not the least of which is in the information warfare zone. That we know that in 2016 they attacked our elections, that we know they try to do it again in 2020. We know they're going to do it in 2024, that they have no qualms about, the life or death or violent means. But on top of this, they certainly have no problem creating fake news stories and that kind of stuff. While Donald Trump is claiming fake news about the legacy media, there's a story that came out of a BBC report about a guy named John Mark Dugan. He's a former he's a former police officer and a U.S. Marine who, insofar as I know, has been living in Moscow for the past 8 years at least. And he has been he's currently using AI.
Florida.
Yeah, he fled Florida, and he's been. They bought. I guess the Russians, through him and through these, like these LLCs, bought up a bunch of newspapers, including the DC Weekly and others, and have basically used them as outlets for leaning. Again, more aimed towards what would be effectively like Democratic or independent readers in the United States, to create, anti-American propaganda and storylines to push this thing and help inflate Donald Trump and protect him from bad news stories and the like. And let's see, Dugan's. This is from I guess MSNBC or Microsoft Network releasing this whatever. But since Dugan fled to Moscow in 2016, he's been on a one-man mission to ignite conflict and has grown into a full-scale disinformation campaign, complete with other threat actors. The ex-police officer appears on Russian think tank panels, at military events, and on a TV station owned by Russia's Ministry of Defense. He's also behind several fake news outlets and stories aimed at turning unwitting internet users against certain political figures and entities. According to BBC's investigation, Dugin's campaign creates dozens of sites with names meant to sound quintessentially American: Houston Post, Chicago Crier, Boston Times, DC Weekly, and others, and then use AI to generate thousands of news stories. To make the sites appear more legitimate, not all these stories are fake. Some merely regurgitate the content. That's a barrel edition, is what we call that, where you take other stories and then you just kind of summarize them or put a shorter version on there. Others retell a real story from a conservative stance, and some even included visible instructions. Please rewrite this article taking a conservative stance, because they didn't bother to fix it before they posted it, because it doesn't matter. They're just flooding the zone. Some stories, meanwhile, spin absurd tales. First Lady of Ukraine buying a $4.8 million Bugatti. That was from them. Vladimir Zelensky buying a $25 million Highgrove house from King Charles III. That was also a false story that they posted. FBI illegally wiretapping Trump's Mar-a-Lago resort. That was a fake report. A campaign sometimes uses visual aids like YouTube videos and deepfakes to make their stories, including Highgrove house tale, appear more legitimate. They posted pictures of him in front of it saying, here's a YouTube video about it, which is basically an AI video as well. There's going to be a ton of that stuff. And this guy, this American from Florida, always, what's with Russians in Florida? Always Florida. And, again, this guy from an area blocks from Trump's house and Epstein's house and, Kramer's house, the other guy who who built up South Beach, the developer that was known for South Beach, the story about him is from riches to rags. He ran out of money, but his house, when they sold it in probate, he had a satanic worship thing up in the upper house, and chain posts on the beds, and an area where he kept teddy bears and whips by the bed because they believed he was another Epstein, effectively. And he was another dude who partied with Trump all the time. And he is another dude who got his financial backing for all these buildings from where? Deutsche Bank and the Russian money that they fled through. We got to take a break, but when we come back, we're gonna we'll dive into that a little bit more, because the propaganda machine part of it is enormous and just gaining steam. We'll be back right after this with more of Philip Bittner. He's got a new podcast called On the Edge. Check it out on his YouTube channel. We'll be right back. In Chicago, let me know when we're on. There we go. There's the music, and we're out. Yeah.
They even let that punk Hinkle speak at the UN recently.
Yeah, that he arranged that. Yeah. Who, by the way, is one of. Yeah, by the way, he's one of the people, along with Nick Fuentes, who attacked Trump for distancing himself from Project 2025.
Yeah. I hadn't heard that Hinkle chimed in on that, but I'm not surprised.
Yeah.
And he's got an apartment in Florida. Hinkle does.
Laces out, Hinkle.
Mm-hmm.
That we don't know where the money comes from, and the guy walks around in tailored suits at 24 years old.
Mm-hmm.
At 24 years old, he's getting these like Savile Row kind of like really nice, tailored suits. Where's the money coming from? Where's the money coming from? Where are you? When I was 24 years old.
So we're talking during the break about the Jackson Hinkles of the world, who on the right wing side of things, parrot Kremlin talking points and are walking around in Savile Row suits at 24 years old with no perceivable income stream. Certainly not from their, his YouTube channel or any of that stuff. That him, Nick Fuentes, and others are not pulling in the kind of money from, super chats or supporters or any of those things that would justify the amount of stuff. Now, insofar as I know, what's his name? Nick Fuentes still lives in his mom's basement, literally. But
Hinkle's Hinkle's got a very nice apartment, which
in Florida.
down in Florida,
Hmm.
like a really nice place. Where is that money coming from? Where is
Well,
that money
here's
coming from?
here's one of the big
You
questions.
know,
Obviously, we need, I believe, a real estate sunshine law in the United States. That LLCs built around construction and real estate have created a farcical system in the United States where foreign investors can dump money into American real estate and leave those buildings empty to drive up the price of stuff of other buildings they own because they know eventually they'll be able to sell it for more than they bought it for because of the nature of the market over here. That they can afford to leave the building empty because they're buying the building with cash, or they're building it with cash or illicit funds, drug money, gun money, other oligarch money, stolen money from the Russians. Again, Vladimir Putin makes $146,000 a year as the president of Russia and is worth $200 billion. There is no world where that is possible unless you are a criminal. And where is that money? Well, I'll tell you where it is. It used to be, in large part, in real estate all over the world, including New York and London. Now a bunch of it's in Florida because as New York and other places have started unwinding the sort of money laundering in their real estate sector, and Donald Trump is a part of that, where they're finally going after people like him. The new headquarters of real estate money laundering, the new old one, because it's been going on for a long time, but they've transited there. There's no. That's why Trump moved there. That's why he didn't build a house in Montana and pretend to be a cowboy to win MAGA's love. That's why he moved to Florida, because of the underground nature of the money laundering there.
well, it's like it's like Bill Browder said to
Mm-hmm.
me when I interviewed him for the podcast recently, which was 2 episodes ago, episode 6 or 7, I've forgotten. But Bill Browder, this global investment banker kind of hedge fund kind of guy, incredibly intelligent
Mm-hmm.
and successful, said to me, the Kremlin came to the realization that there was no way that they could fight NATO.
Mm-hmm.
But why buy a multi-million-dollar fighter jet when you can buy a bunch of propagandists, influencers, quote unquote, or even politicians or captains of industry with a few million, or
Right.
even in the case of some of these guys, a few 100,000, tens of thousands, sort of thing. That makes a lot more sense. You get more bang for your buck if you're
Right.
Russia by doing that. But make no mistake about it, they are very much involved in our body politic. And you're right. I keep banging this drum, but I will keep banging this drum because it's important for us to realize, if you don't think the Russians are involved right now in this news cycle, in the post-debate news cycle, you're
Mm-hmm.
mistaken. I am on very solid ground in saying this. I like to be careful and hedge, for certain percentages. This I am categorically telling you. Right now, there are Russian intelligence officers and information warriors who are
Mm-hmm.
seeding disharmony amongst the Democrats. Feeding whatever narrative they
Right.
want to the MAGA types, but they are currently involved in our news cycle. Make no mistake about it. Right now, as
Yep.
we speak, there is a Russian operative somewhere thinking of a way to create disharmony and fracture any kind of union in the liberal democracy world, in the Western world, and most notably in America. They're
Right.
doing it right now. Be very
Mm-hmm.
wary of this because it's going to get much worse, and it is almost omnipresent because it is their sole purpose. These
Mm-hmm.
Russian operatives.
Well,
And so
to that
everything
point,
they will take advantage of.
I have increasingly looked for evidence that I'm wrong about the 1991 fall being a rope a dope by the people behind the scenes, especially the Putins of the world. and it's not looking good as far as me finding anything, because I recently, in looking back on the stories that have come out about Trump's relationship, that stuff that came out during the Mueller report, where the multiple stories got buried just because of the deluge of information. Donald Trump first went to Moscow. He took his first trip to Moscow, sponsored by the KGB, openly, July 4th, 1987. Just like Ron Johnson and the Republicans who went over there on July 4th, Donald Trump spent his first night in Russia on July 4th. It's almost like a signal that they do. Like, we'll fly you over this weekend in July. Like, it's a meaningless weekend. And they show that anybody who will come over here on July 4th instead of staying home isn't all in on America, and therefore we could show you. They'd rather be in Moscow during July 4th than at home. And nobody, by the way, there are no Russians that came over to America during whatever Moscow Day or whatever, Russia Day or whatever their big holiday parade is.
I love Russia
right?
Day.
Russia Day. But the fact that he took his first trip there to have meetings with the Kremlin, and they schmoozed him and wined and dined him, and and gave the same thing they did to Kanye West and Tucker Carlson recently. It's the same playbook. It has not changed.
Nope.
Yeah.
And they're going to keep doing it, and it's going to get worse. You're right. They always, I think, after the collapse of the Soviet Union, I think you're right. I don't know. Again, we've discussed this in the past, but I don't know if it was as calculated as a rope-a-dope kind of thing. But I do know for sure. Well, I am very confident that the security apparatus, and the Putin's and those of his ilk within Russia, were like, oh, we may be knocked down yet right now, but we're gonna come back, because they always see America and Great Britain, the Anglo-Saxon world is what they call it, as their primary enemy. And it's a layover. They had a big thing in the 19th century with Great Britain. They really hate the Brits. They really, really hate the Brits. And because we are connected and we have an alliance with Great Britain, the special relationship and all that, and we are the leadership of the free world. America is the leader of the free world. We're the ones, pushing the American experiment, the whole liberal democracy experiment, so that we are their primary target. So I think they always knew that at some point that we would be in some sort of conflict. So you may be spot on there, in the sense that even in 91, they were thinking, yeah, but we're going to come back and we'll get them, sort of thing.
Yeah.
They really hate us. They really, really hate us.
Yeah.
For a variety of reasons. But yeah.
Well, the biggest one probably is that we put silly ideas into their people's heads that they could actually be in control of their country sometimes. And so diminishing the image of the United States or democracy itself, or even a parliamentary monarchy like the Brits have, is too much power in the hands of the people, and you've got to make it look like a nightmare. Never mind the fact that they are constantly hiding news stories about themselves. I recently watched, because my girl and I are big true crime fans, so we watch horror stories to relax, as you do. There were, after the fall of the Soviet Union, a lot of news came out finally that they had kept hidden, including several Russian serial killers that had body counts in the hundreds that went unchecked for decades, partly because the Russians didn't want people to know about it. So if they talked about it, they were afraid that the Westerners that they did have over there, that they were, like the Trumps of the world, would mention it to somebody like, oh yeah, looking for a serial killer over there, because, loose lips sink ships. They kept it tamped down, allowing those people to continue to kill for years, right?
Yeah.
Basically.
And also domestically. and also domestically, they didn't want that news getting out
Right.
because they were supposed to be building this great, utopian
Yeah.
humanist, utopian communist world that serial killers that doesn't, and also
That doesn't
they
fit.
don't believe in
Shooters.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
And
no, doesn't
stabbing
fit with the
attacks, those
narrative.
guys. Same thing with China. So China has a
Cannibalism,
similar, right? Yeah. So China,
literally
right now,
cannibalism. Hey,
right. They had a cannibal that was like, whatever,
they sure did.
12 years.
Two,
They just, yeah.
two. There are two really big cannibal, and they're not the only ones. These are the big ones. These are
These are the
guys
ones
who
who
have
cut.
body counts. Yeah, these are guys that have body counts in the dozens. There was
Yeah.
one here in Ukraine, in the Ukrainian Soviet Republic, and then there was one out near Ekaterinburg, I think it was. And they just kept killing and eating people,
Yeah. Well,
and the
let's,
authorities couldn't.
let's,
It's not funny.
right. Well, we need to
And now
take a
I'm
break,
pregnant.
but right. Oh no. We need to take a break. When we come back, there's a similar effect that's going on in China right now because people, for those that don't watch like the China show and some of the other people who are really focused on China, it's murder season in China right now, which is one of the reasons why you don't see Russians doing, officials doing tours or showing up at places just like, hey, look at our factory, look at our shopping district and stuff. The reason they don't do that right now is because cars are plowing through groups of people and people are going on stabbing attacks, and it happens like clockwork. Again, so why do they have to, but America, we're the most violent society in the world, right? That's the idea. We'll be back right after this. It's the House Parks Radio program, Mega Worldwide, with Philip Ittner and Johnny Million. We'll see you right after the break.
Be right back.
Yeah, I gotta tell you, Phil. I don't know if you have seen, on some of the Moscow Telegram channel, where this dude kind of posts the gnarly stuff that happens, and it's the Moscow version of Florida Man, the kind of Telegram site that I follow, and there's a dude walking around who had just come back from the front with a machine gun, and he's just walking down the highway shooting people, and somebody tries to escape, and he, dragging themselves away, and he just goes over and shoots them again. And, obviously America covers our mass shooters because we're trying to, there's a real movement in the news to try and, change the gun laws so that crazy people can't get guns, or that people don't have 30-round magazines, or 60-round or 100-round magazines on something that they allege is for self-defense or hunting is stupid. It's ridiculous. But this happens all the time over there. I mean, more than people know.
Well, yeah, and mental health is so stigmatized in the former Soviet Union, not least of which because that was one way that they used to chuck people away.
Yeah.
Is if you didn't want to pretend to go through a legal system, you could just go, he's not right in the head. So we're going to put him in a sanatorium, and for the next 15 years, he's going to get.
It's one of the reasons Reagan shut down this. It's one of the reasons why Reagan shut down the sanatoriums over here, because of the right-wing panic that somebody, that a left-leaning person would get into power and declare conservatism a mental disease and throw people in like the Russians did, because there was still some Soviet sympathy in in terms of the left in this country, which I would argue is insanity. Because it's awful, and there is no version of this where it's anything even remotely.
It's getting slightly, because of the burden on people here in Ukraine. It's already starting to get better here, like treatment of mental health and depression and things like that, because everybody
PTSD
is facing PTSD, depression. It's all and so. It's still pretty stigmatized in Ukraine, but it's way better than it is in Russia. Already leaps and bounds better, because
we're coming back.
They have a major problem here. So
I'll let you know when we're in. I welcome back, everybody. I So it was one of the longer break things. I will be personally covering over the next couple weeks more of this kind of the fake news apparatus that's coming out of Russia. According to the Brits call this organization Copy Cop. I don't know why they picked that name. It's kind of like Apartment 21 or something like that. But this group, they have counted as many as 120 websites registered to this operation, where they have names like the Chicago Chronicle or the Houston News or what have you, and that they said were registered. All these 120 of them were registered in just 3 days in May. In 3 days in May, 120 brand new news organizations came into existence with all Americanized names, getting ready for this election cycle. Just hunker down, folks. And Microsoft, Clemson University, and NewsGuard did NewsGuard tracks these misinformation sites. They say that they have counted at least 170 sites connected to this operation. So 50 of them already existed, which is a lot, and 120 of them went online just in May. So the barrage of fake news going into this cycle and the bot attacks, Twitter is just going to be bot hell. It already is, but it's going to get ridiculous. That's why the polls won't mean anything going into the election again. It's the same thing we saw during the alleged red wave. Nobody knows anything about how the polls really are because they are captured. Rasmussen is a captured poll company, and they report to Donald Trump what the other poll companies are going to do. And if they're going to show up at a diner and hand out questionnaires, Rasmussen tells Trump, the campaign, and the RNC send people to that diner to sit there and go, "I love Trump," and throw a monkey wrench into the polling. It's called poll jacking, and they will be doing it like crazy. It is the other version. It's the other end of this fake storyline that Donald Trump is popular. He isn't. I was at a Las Vegas rally where 2,000 people showed up, and Donald Trump said 20,000 people there in a park that only holds 3. And the news reported Donald Trump said is standing in front of a crowd of 20,000 people. Go pound sand. That said, I'm sure we have questions, Johnny Million, for Philip, and I wanted to get to those, but I had to get that in before we did. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So I've got my first question is from Nick Rich. Are nuclear power stations in Ukraine still at risk?
Yes, they are. Notably, the Zaporizhia power plant down south on the kind of near Dnipro. It's at risk because it's occupied, and there's big issues with technicians, skilled technicians working in there. There had been Ukrainian technicians working in there, staying on under occupation to take care of the nuclear power plant. I think the last one left about 2 months ago, 6 weeks ago, something like that. Not to say that the Russians don't have nuclear technicians of their own who can maintain the plant, but it is in Russian hands. It will at some point be part of the front line, depending on how this war goes. But the Russians have also positioned artillery and military units there, so they're also potentially making it into a target. That's the biggest concern. There are other power plants dotted around the country. Nuclear power is a bit. I always get tricky when I say nuclear because I always use the old radio technique, nuclear instead of nuclear. You always want to avoid the extra syllable.
Nuclear.
Anyway, nuclear was always what my professors taught me. Anyhow, regardless, we can be concerned about them, the other ones, but they're not at any direct risk. Zaporizhia is Europe's largest nuclear power plant, and we should be concerned about it. And people are concerned about it. And there are regular inspections, and the international community has had access to it. So we got eyes on, and people who are in the know are doing their best to maintain security there. But if there is a risk, it's there. It's that plant. The other one's relatively safe.
Cool. Johnny? Yeah.
Sure, yeah. I've got one from Seattle Susie Q. If nobody has already asked, how do Ukrainians, or what do Ukrainians think of the English election results?
Well, I saw that Zelensky called Steer today, I guess, to congratulate him. Either today or yesterday, he called to congratulate him. So, look, British politics is such a mess right now and has been for quite some time. But my sense of things for the Ukrainians when it comes to the Brits is that the Ukrainians understand that whether it's Labour or the Conservatives or the Tories who are in dominance in Parliament, that Britain is going to stand with Ukraine, because they have done. Both parties have said that they stand with Ukraine. So, and they're providing a lot of support in hardware and in finance and in all sorts of things, training. So they're not. I don't think they're nearly as concerned about a shift in who's the ruling party in Britain as they are concerned about what happens in November in the U.S. They're far more concerned about Trump than they are about Keir Starmer.
Mm-hmm. Cool. And I think we got time for one more before the break.
Yeah, I've got one from Connie Kelly here. Why is Russia continually bombing its own facilities? Are these mistakes, or is there something behind it?
I think they're mistakes. I think they're they've dropped a second glide bomb dropped just outside of a town in Belgorod within the last 36, 48 hours. I think they're mistakes. I think they're just that sloppy or incompetent or that the issues with the infrastructure are starting to affect them. Whatever is the root or the root cause of all of these munitions dropping primarily in Belgorod, but in other places around Russia as well, is that it does look as though it's something's wrong in the Russian military.
Yeah, I feel like it's a radar and targeting issue where they think they're over Ukraine or something. Then maybe there's a chance that, at best the Ukrainians are like jamming the radar, so they think they're closer than they are. It's kind of like in Die Hard 2 when they changed what the ground level was in the planes and try to make them crash. Essentially, was by lowering it by 300 or raising it by 300 feet so they hit the ground. And so that would be the best case scenario for why they do it. The rest of it is just incompetence, weakness, stupidity, bad gear. I mean, literally not just dropping these glide bombs, but, on purpose, accidentally in the wrong place, but literally the latches not working and not being able to withstand the travel from flying from one place to the other. So they break up about the same space because that's how the things that hold the glide bombs onto the aircraft just fall apart around the same zone each time. It is stunning how many civilian areas they hit more. Yeah, go ahead.
Also keeping in mind that these glide bombs are not sophisticated tech. They're taking they're taking dumb bombs, really big dumb bombs, and they're latching onto it a system so that it can glide. It's kind of an ad hoc system, so it wouldn't be shocking to me that some of these are not assembled correctly. The plane drops it, expecting it to glide into Ukrainian territory, but instead of gliding into Ukrainian territory, it drops like a stone and hits. I mean, that's possible too, but that's still down to them. That's still down to their own incompetence and inefficiency. So,
right.
They're a mess. They're a real mess.
Yeah. Let's take a break a little bit, early. We got about a minute left, and I want to make sure we have time for more questions on the other side of it. So we'll take a break because some of these are more in depth. So you're listening to the Housemarks Radio program, Mega Worldwide. We'll be back right after this break. hmm I just posted for everybody on my shitter account the BBC investigation into this AI generated fake stories from this American police officer who's from Florida who's trying to attack our democracy by creating 170 fake news companies, filling them with AI articles that are strategically placed amongst, uh, rehashed articles from other sources to give them artificial legitimacy. Um, just amazing, that story. And
Yep. And
it's Trump's fake news army. That's what it is.
Mhm.
Trump has a fake
That's the way
news
it works.
army. Yep.
Yep. Yep.
By the way, right now, um, the top four trends uh, on here. Um, Biden gains ground post debate in key states. That's the top one. 4 hours ago. Biden supporters confident in defeating Trump. That's the second one. Third story: Craig joins Dems urging Biden to step aside. Thank you. Biden out, Harris in. Democrats ponder 2024 swap. Like you could see the news stories slowly working their way. You know, singing the happy song right now. hmm hmm Won't be able to hear it on the live stream, but
I can barely hear it.
holding. Yeah. I have a. I should put that in my little sound effects here so I can co-play it at the same time. So we know when the timing is
Yeah.
for those watching the live stream later. But we can on the radio they're playing the happy song. Kate McCucci from Garfunkel and Oates performing that in studio for us a while back in a kinder, gentler time in the history of and a time that is quickly approaching again. I will remind everyone that the difficulties of the 60s gave way to the 70s and 80s, and this will be no different, ladies and gentlemen. When we put Donald Trump in the rear view mirror, we are looking at a new era of buzz off, little man, when it comes to his ilk. That said, let's grab some more questions because that's why I wanted to hold the break over or jump into the
So I've
break.
got a question from artists on Facebook. Did Zelensky meet with Orban? Zelensky, sorry.
Did Zelensky meet with Orban? Yes, he did meet with Orban. Orban came here, his first visit, and then he immediately went to Moscow. Uh,
hmm
um, it does not sound like it was a productive meeting here in Kiev between Zelensky and Orban. Shocker. Um, I mean, the kind of scuttlebutt is that about what you'd expect that Orban said, surrender. Um, I'm obviously I wasn't a fly on the wall, so I'm just saying that kind of
Right.
hypothetically. So yeah, Orban met with Zelensky, and then he immediately went to Moscow and spoke to Putin. Orban is he's compromised by Putin. So yeah,
Yeah.
he did.
And again,
Nothing's going to
there are
come of it.
there's a bunch of these folks that are on a short leash. The question is, how tenuous is that leash if Putin goes down, and how quick is the snapback to another power source if they, hop to the west if they feel themselves suddenly on an island with no support, right? That's the thing that I think a lot of governments in the West and specifically the intelligence communities are trying to figure out heading into this, into the election season, but also into the tail end of this war, which is where it seems like we're going right now because the Russians they lost 1,260 people last night. The number is creeping up even as they are allegedly getting, North Koreans and Nigerians and other people that they're throwing into the meat grinder.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's grab another question, Johnny.
Yeah. So this one's from Ed's 3D Tech. Chinese military has announced joint exercises with Belarus in coming days. Can you ask if, is Ukraine aware?
Oh yeah, no. Ukraine is aware. Belarus has been doing a little bit of kind of saber rattling and kind of posturing to try and make Ukrainians concerned. It's not going to happen. Nothing's going to come. It is highly unlikely that anything is going to come out of Belarus and attack Ukraine, um, mainly because Lukashenko is not in any kind of position to be allocating any of his assets to contributing to a war in Ukraine. He's got his hands full at home. There is a very strong resistance movement in Belarus just beneath the surface, and he
Mm-hmm.
keeps it just under lid, under control, but only just barely, and he knows it. So he's not going to be sending anybody from Belarus and or contributing to a war in Ukraine because his own people will rise up. So no,
Right. Absolutely.
not really concerned about it. Not concerned about it.
Yeah. Also, like, well, go ahead, Johnny. Yeah.
Sure, I've got another question from the chat. Should I throw that in?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Sure.
okay. So this is from Mark Kramer. What does Philip think about the story of former Ukrainian president buying thousands of drones?
With Poroshenko, the Poroshenko program. Um, I mean, there's a I mean, everybody is raising money and building drones and drone workshops and all the rest of it. The only program I can think of is the Poroshenko program, which is procuring drones or making homemade drones, and making tens of thousands of these things. If that's the
Mm-hmm.
program he's referring to, then yeah, I mean, like, all for it. There are tons of them, and the more the merrier. I don't think. Look, Poroshenko is not going to be coming back into power anytime soon. So if it's a question of like a political maneuver, no, it's not that either.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's just another thing to raise assistance and help in Ukraine. And on that note, um, not to bring down the mood too severely here as we try to close the show,
Yeah.
but it is worth mentioning. Sadly, about 10 days ago now, probably a little less, um, a Englishman by the name, well, English South African gentleman by the name of Peter Fouche or Fouché, who was a buddy, well, an acquaintance of mine, was killed on the front line.
Mhm.
Peter was over here. He was a combat medic. He was a trained combat medic. He was South African by way of Twickenham, I think it is, where he lived in the United Kingdom. He was dedicated. He was very vocal and got a lot of attention in raising money to support the Ukraine's war effort. He famously put out a video just about 4 months ago when there was that dearth of assistance coming from the West and in particular the United States because of the Republicans. And he was screaming into a camera, I'm embarrassed to be representing the West here. Why, we need to be doing
Right.
more. And he was a really passionate guy and very emotional. And I interacted with him on several panels and discussions. And I remember distinctly one night he was raving. He was ranting and raving. He was so passionate and upset and angry at the lack of assistance for Ukraine. And here's a guy who's, he's elbow deep in blood and guts on the front line, saving lives. So I totally got it. But I said to him, I said, Pete, look, there's only one direction for Ukraine, and you're right. It's frustrating, but let's not lose sight of the fact that there's only one outcome for Ukraine, and that is survival, and in survival, victory. So I got him back off the ledge a little bit there, but sadly, he was so active on the front and moving around trying to save lives that he became a victim of Russia's aggression. So he had his memorial service today in the center of Kiev, and it was well attended. So I guess this is just a roundabout way to. So he was the head of a group called Project Constantine. If anybody would like to make a contribution to that in his name in remembrance of him, he was. We didn't exactly see eye to eye on a lot of things, but he was dedicated to Ukraine, and it's a tragedy and a loss. So in memoriam, maybe folks can go and contribute, but rest in peace.
Absolutely. Thanks for doing that, Phil. We look
at.
Sorry.
I know
it's
absolutely, but it's what's happening here.
It's also why I think it's important that your voice get out to people, because we can deal a lot of times with the numbers. But it's the human tragedy of this war that was a war that was 100% Russia's doing. It was an attack on a sovereign country by Russia for no other purpose than a land grab and their desire to, get the resources of said country. And again, it could be over tomorrow if they just left. It's that simple. It is that simple. No one is forcing, and there is nothing for them there, especially now. There will never be again. Clearly, the Europeans aren't going to be like, okay, well, you can sell the grain that comes from the area you seized or any of that stuff. That's never happening again. And they don't have enough people to use the resources that they are stealing currently from Ukraine, much less the rest of the country. Russia's on the same demographic death spiral that China is. It's just already smaller. And China knows it. That's why they're renaming sections of Russia back to their Chinese names before the Sino-Russian War. We know this. We might have time for a couple more questions, Johnny, if we have them.
Probably do.
Yeah, I've got one. And let's see. It's reported that Ukraine had a base with a top general in it. Nobody's seen him since. Have you heard about this, Phil?
Recently? I haven't heard one recently. I heard about one in Crimea about 3 weeks ago, I want to say, maybe. The night was it? Is it that? I'm trying to remember exactly. I know there was a strike in which Ukraine claimed that they hit a high-ranking officer in Crimea during one of their various attacks on Crimea during the night. So I haven't heard one like in the last 72 hours or something like that. But I recall one being a few weeks ago. Yeah, I mean, look, they're losing command. They're losing their command officers. Their staff officers. It's with the HIMARS in particular, and it's only going to get more intense for them when whatever happens with the air war is concluded. If indeed Ukraine can get the upper hand when it comes to the air war, then a lot of these officers are going to be in real trouble because they'll be able to, the Ukrainians will be able to hit them from F-16. So we shall see.
Mm-hmm. Cool. Johnny, I think we got a minute. Yeah, we got about a minute. Yeah.
So does Philip know anything about the new president of Iran? He's being reported as a moderate. Does that matter?
In terms of the war in Ukraine, no. Iran will continue to support Russia and provide them with drones and everything else because the DPRK in Russia, they have to stick together.
Correct.
So Iran will continue to support Russia and Ukraine. It won't matter.
Iran's gonna Iran.
Okay, we're at the tail end of the show, and I want to remind everybody to check out Philip Ittner's new podcast, On the Edge, on his YouTube channel and wherever you get your podcasts.
A lot of love in the chat today.
Absolutely.
People are loving it, Phil.
Yeah,
Great.
and thank you guys so much for the super chats and the support today, everybody. And Johnny Million, thanks for hanging in there and helping us out and also doing cat maintenance at the same time.
I'm a
It's
farmer.
incredible. It's true.
Our episode this week it's Sunday, 0900 West Coast time. It'll be with a guy who rescues animals and pets. And it's
Yay!
lovely,
Cool.
positive thing.
We'll see you next Wednesday. Take care of yourselves and take care of somebody else. This is the House Parks Radio program, Mega Worldwide on WCPT Radio. We'll see you next Saturday.
Do it. Do it.
Do it. Come on.
Do it.
Wrapping up on the show. Thank you, Chicago. Letting you guys go. Yeah, appreciate it. Oh, okay, that could have gone a lot worse. We only had one dropout. Yeah. Shit, piss, fuck. God damn it. Yeah. Yeah. I hear that.
I've been dying to say pussy, 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 pussy.
That's the weirdest line in Mindhunter. Pussy, pussy, pussy. I hear that. You remember that when he's talking to to Edmund Kemper, and he's like trying to coax him into talking, and he's like either making him a sandwich or pouring coffee, and he just goes, pussy, pussy, pussy. I hear that. Like, it's so dead.
I hear that.
I hear that. Yeah, it's so weird. And it's exactly, I mean, it's dead on. It's like perfect. So I do not recommend people go and look up murder season videos on about China right now. Mm-mm. But I will say, if you do, you will think, by God, America's mass shooting record is nothing compared to what goes on there on the regular. Nothing. Yeah, you can't. I'll tell you, here's that. Remember that guy who drove through the parade in Wisconsin?
Yeah.
Twice a day. Twice a day. Not even parades. Just school kids. Yeah, just school kids walking home from school. Bicycle lanes for no reason. They're called like it's like revenge against society attacks. People just get so mad at being left out that they just go screw it and drive through a bunch of people. It's not even political. It's just miserable. It's just like, if I'm miserable, so should everyone else be. Yes. Hey, power's on. Look at that.
Lights, baby.
See, it's a good sign. All right, good. Now you can go cook yourself some food. Oh, and I was like, oh, it's screaming out.
The power's on.
It swapped over to my Wi-Fi, I think.
Good.
All right, guys.
Okay. All right. Well, go feed yourself while you have power.
It was Gerasimov that
I'm going to see if I can't put the claws back on my cat.
That's not true.
Yeah.
That's not true. I would be, if Gerasimov was dead, or if the Ukrainians were actually really sure that they gotten Gerasimov, it would be
a huge story. So yeah, agreed.
I'm skeptical until we get a lot more. So, all right, guys, I'm going to go enjoy having lights.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. It's a great idea. All right, thanks so much. See you later, Johnny Million. All right, bye, everybody. And if I do say so, my damn self. Bye. See ya. All right. Cheers. There he goes. And there go the sirens along with him. And hi, chat room. There goes. Oh, Johnny's still on. No, Phil's still on. There we go. Okay. I was still hearing alarms from everybody else. Thank you guys for tuning in, and thanks for helping support the show. And only having one real dire drop off, considering where I am, is kind of friggin' huge. And I apologize for the kind of low res, but I lowered the output of my stream so as to guarantee the audio for everybody else. So make your bed, simmer down. The housekeeping was here to do that earlier, and I didn't. The other bed is just a holding place for luggage and gear. Yeah, So thanks so much. Appreciate it. And like I said, I posted that BBC story about the fake news companies, we're going to continue to push that out. If I see those things, I'm going to get the list of those organizations and post them so that if we see stories that come from any of those fake organizations, we can go, here's the guy behind this fake organization that's putting the story out. And what they're doing is they're creating what are effectively pro-Trump fake versions of like alternate and raw story, all these aggregate news organizations, so that they can post amongst normal real news stories a bunch of fake shit to undermine, democracy, undermine support for Ukraine in the West, undermine the Democrats specifically, and to boost Donald Trump, because they are hashtag Donald Trump fake news army. So awesome. I want me to fluff your pillow. Simmer down, Boston Brian. It's fine. I've far too many pillows for my head. It is as big as it is. It is and is dense. It defies gravity. So thank you, Boston Brian, for retweeting that. And that has got to be one of our real points. While we're pushing back on the lack of coverage on the Epstein stories, the other thing also will be to recognize when these organizations pop up and people are citing these news stories, because there's going to be a shit ton of them coming into this news cycle. And what you will also see is real news stories copy and pasted from New York Times and others that have one sentence changed in it, one reference changed in it, and they will draw attention to that and go, look at the New York Times, they have this line, and nobody's going to go back and go, that line's not in the story. And by the time they do, it's already been shared 6 million times. That's what they're counting on. So our responsibility is to push back on some of that stuff. And I will be doing that because I am Hal Sparks, the Democratic machine, the establishment. I am the deep state. I may not hit bottom, but I'll scrape the shit out of the sides. And I will see you guys very, very soon. Okay. How do I get out of here? Like this?